Lyra sat in the huge lecture hall, her bright silver eyes fixed on the holographic screen. She was an exchange student from the Zaran star cluster, and today was her first human biology class. The professor, an older human with kind eyes, spoke calmly about something that made her chest tighten. Unlike most species, human males are fertile all year round, he said, his voice echoing through the hall. Lyra blinked, sure she had heard wrong. Her kind only entered mating season once, every 3 cycles, and females had to wait for that rare time. For a species to be fertile at any moment of any cycle felt unnatural. She leaned forward, her thin fingers gripping the edge of the desk. Around her, the other students took notes like it was nothing. Did no one else understand how shocking this was? Her mind raced with questions. If humans were always fertile, how did they control their population? Was this why they were considered one of the fastest-growing species in the galaxy? She wrote furiously in her digital pad, her silver hair falling over her face. The professor moved on to another topic, but she barely heard him. At the end of the class, students stood up and left, chatting happily. Lyra stayed in her seat, staring at the screen that had now gone dark. She had come to Earth to learn, but she didn't expect to discover something that might shake the galaxy. Her people always warned that humans were unpredictable, but this was something else. She stood slowly, hugging her pad close. Her eyes scanned the room until they stopped on one human male sitting 2 rows down. He was packing his bag, humming softly, unaware of the storm of thoughts in her head. He looked normal, simple brown hair, calm face, a gentle smile when someone bumped into him. Lyra swallowed, feeling a strange pull of curiosity. If the professor was right, that human male carried a secret inside his body that could change everything. Male glanced up and caught her staring. Lyra froze, her heart skipping a beat. He smiled politely, the universal gesture of friendliness, and for some reason it made her stomach twist. She quickly turned away and walked out of the hall. Her steps too fast, her mind too loud. Outside, the campus buzzed with life. Humans laughed, talked, played music, their energy filling the air. Lyra stood under a tall tree, trying to breathe. She had to know the truth. She had to see for herself if this was real. Her people had strict rules about interfering with other species. But this wasn't interference. This was research, she told herself. Her silver eyes drifted back to the lecture hall doors. The male walked out, swinging his bag over his shoulder. The sunlight hit his hair, making it look golden for a second. Lyra bit her lip, her decision already made. She would study him, observe him, find proof. Her heart thumped as she whispered his name from the roster she had memorized. Ethan. For the next few days, Lyra followed him quietly. She watched from the library corner as he read books. She sat a few tables away in the cafeteria as he laughed with his friends. Every move he made, every word he said, she recorded in her pad. Ethan was polite, calm, and kind, nothing strange at all. But that only made her more curious. How could someone so normal carry such a powerful secret? Inside one evening, she lost her focus and got too close. Ethan turned around suddenly, catching her just a step behind him. Lyra froze like a trapped animal, her silver eyes wide. "You've been following me," he said softly. No anger in his voice, only confusion. Her mouth opened and closed, her brain screaming for a lie, but no words came. Instead, she blurted out the one question burning in her mind. "Is it true? Are human males fertile all the time?" The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. Ethan blinked, taken aback. "What?" he asked, almost laughing in surprise. Lyra clenched her fists, her cheeks glowing faint blue with embarrassment. "Answer me, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan tilted his head, studying her alien face for a long moment. Then with a small smirk he said, "I'll tell you. But only if you tell me why you want to know." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. He wasn't running, he wasn't scared, he was curious. She didn't realize it yet, but that was the moment everything began to change. Ethan stood there, with his arms crossed, His eyes locked on Lyra. She shifted nervously, her silver hair glowing faintly under the campus lights. Her people never prepared her for this, for being caught, for being questioned. But now she had no way out, and the truth was burning inside her like fire. "Why do you want to know something?" "Like that?" Ethan asked again, his tone gentle but firm. Lyra's throat felt dry, words sticking to her tongue. She could not tell him about her mission, not about the reports she had to send back to the Zarin Council. But she also could not lie, not when her entire reason for being here was to learn the truth. "It is different from my species," she finally said, her voice soft as wind. "We only reproduce in a very small window, once every 3 cycles. It is controlled, limited." Ethan raised his brows, the corner of his mouth twitching in surprise. "That's wow, so like a mating season," he said, trying to understand. Lyra nodded slowly, her silver eyes meeting his. "Yes, a mating season, but you are fertile all the time, how?" Ethan let out a small laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "I mean, yeah, I guess we are. We don't really think about it. It's just normal for us." Normal, that word echoed in her head like a strange melody. To him, it was simple. To her, it was impossible. Her heart pounded as she realized this was bigger than she imagined. Ethan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a curious whisper. "So you've been following me too?" "What? Test it." Lyra's cheeks flushed a pale blue, the Zarin sign of embarrassment. "No, not test, just observe," she stammered, clutching her digital pad to her chest. Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head in disbelief. "You aliens are something else," he said with a smile. Something inside Lyra twisted at his words. No one had ever called her something else before. In her world, everything was measured, calculated, defined. But here, with this human, it felt unpredictable, alive. That night, back in her small dorm room, Lyra paced the floor. She replayed the conversation over and over. Her mission was clear: gather proof, send data, confirm if the professor's statement was true. But now, it felt different. It wasn't just about research anymore. It was about understanding him. The next day, she prepared her plan. Her digital pad filled with schedules, behavioral patterns, biological markers. She decided to run what her people called a soft experiment. No invasive scans, no advanced tech, just observation, interaction, connection. If she could get closer to Ethan, maybe she could see for herself how human fertility worked. Maybe she could understand why this species was feared and admired across the stars. In the library, she sat across from him, pretending to study. In the cafeteria, she joined the same line, noting his diet. In the lab, she volunteered to be his partner for a project. Each interaction, each moment, she recorded quietly in her mind. But the more time she spent with him, the less it felt like research. His laugh, his patience, his strange human kindness. It stirred something deep inside her. One evening, while they worked late in the science lab, Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You're not very good at hiding things, you know," he said with a smirk. Lyra froze, clutching the datapad in her hands. "What do you mean?" she whispered. He pointed to her notes. "You think I can't see you writing every time I move or talk?" Her cheeks glowed blue again. It is for my study," she said quickly. Ethan tilted his head, his eyes soft but sharp. "Study or curiosity?" he asked quietly. Lyra's breath hitched, and for the first time, she didn't know the answer. Was it still a mission, or was it now something else? Her chest felt heavy, but also warm. No one had ever looked at her the way he did. Like she wasn't just an alien student, but a person. That night, she wrote a new report to the Zarin Council, but her fingers hovered over the send button. For the first time, she didn't send it. Instead, she closed the pad and whispered to herself, "I must know the truth." But not for them, for me. The following day, she took a bold step. Instead of following from the shadows, she sat beside him under the big oak tree on campus. Ethan glanced at her and smiled. "So scientist, what's the next part of your Experiment, he teased. Lyra looked at him seriously, her silver eyes steady. I want to understand what makes humans. Human, she said softly. Ethan laughed, but his laugh wasn't mocking, it was warm. Then you're going to need more than a datapad for that, he replied. For a moment, the world felt quiet. Just the two of them under the fading sunlight. Lyra realized this wasn't just about fertility anymore. It was about connection, about bridging a gap no one else dared to cross, and deep inside, she felt something dangerous blooming. Curiosity had turned into something far more powerful. Something her species had no words for, something humans called trust. The next morning, the campus buzzed with soft chatter as the sun rose over the glass towers. Lyra sat quietly in the library corner, her silver eyes scanning the data she had collected over the past week. Her notes were full of numbers, behavior logs, and small details about Ethan's daily life. But there was something strange, something she couldn't explain with charts or graphs. Every time she wrote his name, her hands slowed down, and her chest felt warm. She shook her head, forcing herself to focus. This was science, not emotion. Not whatever strange thing she felt when he smiled. Her people didn't even have a word for this feeling. She pressed the record button on her digital pad and whispered into it. Observation Day 7. Human male subject shows constant stable biological signs despite no mating season. Consistent with the professor's statement. Before she could continue, a shadow fell over her table. Are you spying on me again? Ethan's voice teased softly. Lyra looked up quickly, her cheeks glowing faint blue. He leaned on the edge of the table, a playful smirk on his face. Or is this still your experiment? He added. She opened her mouth to argue, but no sound came out. Instead, she snapped the pad shut and muttered, "It is research." Ethan sat across from her, folding his arms. You know, for someone studying humans, you don't spend much time talking to one. His words hit her harder than she expected. He was right. She had been observing, measuring, writing, but she hadn't actually tried to understand him beyond the numbers. Taking a deep breath, she looked him in the eye. My people. We do not talk like humans, she said softly. We are not used to sharing feelings. Only facts. Ethan tilted his head, his expression softening. Maybe that's why you're so curious about us, he said quietly. Lyra blinked, unsure how to respond. He continued, his voice calm. You want to understand, not just study, right? She nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking into her. Yes. I want to understand, she admitted. Ethan smiled faintly and leaned back. Then stop writing for a while and just be human with me, he said. His voice was light, but his eyes were serious. Lyra stared at him for a long moment, then carefully placed her pad aside. For the first time, she wasn't observing him as a subject. She was simply looking at Ethan. Hours passed as they talked under the warm light of the library. He asked about her world, her species, her culture. She asked about Earth, about human traditions, and why they seemed to laugh so easily. The differences between them were vast. But strangely, the more they spoke, the smaller that distance felt. Later that night, as Lyra returned to her dorm, her pad vibrated. A new encrypted message flashed across the screen. It was from the Zarin Council. Her heart dropped as she read the words. Your data has been reviewed. Your research is now classified. Do not share further information with the human subject. Lyra's hands trembled. Classified. That word meant the council had noticed something. They were afraid. She sat on her bed, staring at the screen. Her mind raced, wondering what they would do if they discovered her growing connection to Ethan. The next day, she tried to act normal. Ethan met her near the oak tree, smiling like always. But her chest felt heavy with the secret she carried. He noticed her silence and frowned. What's wrong? He asked gently. Lyra hesitated, the council's warning echoing in her mind. I cannot tell you, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. Ethan reached out, not touching her, but close enough for her to feel his warmth. Lyra, you can trust me, he said quietly. Something in his voice broke her walls. My people. They are watching. They think humans. Your fertility. It is too powerful, she whispered. Ethan blinked, stunned. Too powerful. He repeated. Lyra nodded, her silver eyes shimmering. They fear you. They fear what humans can become if this is true. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. Then, slowly, a small smile formed on his lips. Guess we've always been good at scaring people, he said softly, a hint of humor in his tone. Lyra stared at him, confused. He shrugged lightly. Humans. We adapt. We survive. Maybe that's what they're really afraid of. Her chest tightened at his words. It wasn't arrogance. It was something deeper. Something she couldn't put into numbers. Ethan's calm belief in his species was unlike anything she had ever seen. For the first time, she wondered if her council was right to fear them. That night, she didn't write a report. She sat by the window, staring at the human city glowing under the stars. And for the first time in her life, she whispered a question not for science, not for duty, but for herself. What makes humans human? Asterisk. The stars above Earth glimmered like shards of crystal as Lyra's small communicator blinked red. She sat alone in her dorm room, her silver fingers hovering over the device. She had ignored the council's last message, but now the summons was direct. Urgent. Taking a shaky breath, she tapped the screen, and the air in front of her shimmered. 3 tall holograms appeared, their faces hidden under the glowing symbols of the Zaring High Council. Student Lyra. A cold voice spoke. You have gone beyond observation. Your reports suggest direct contact with the human male. Explain. Lyra's throat tightened. I am only learning, she said softly. One of the counselors leaned forward, their voice sharp. You are not authorized to interact emotionally. The subject must remain unaware. This is protocol. Lyra's chest tightened at the word subject. Ethan's face flashed in her mind, his warm smile, his curious eyes. He wasn't a subject, he was a person. I understand, she said quietly. Though her voice trembled, another counselor spoke, their tone colder than the void. Your findings are disturbing. Humans show fertility without a cycle. This trait threatens balance if spread beyond their species. It could destabilize galactic population systems. Lyra's heart pounded. Destabilize, threaten balance. They spoke of humans like a weapon. She clenched her fists, her voice daring to rise. Humans are not a threat, they are. They are more than numbers, she whispered. There was a long silence, the counselor's glowing eyes narrowing. Your judgment is clouded, Lyra, the first voice said. You are hereby ordered to cease all contact with the human male. Return to your vessel for debriefing. The holograms vanished, leaving only cold air and a heavier weight in her chest. Lyra sat frozen, the words ringing in her ears. Cease all contact, leave Ethan behind, erase everything she had learned. For the first time, she didn't feel like a student or a researcher. She felt like a prisoner. The next morning, the campus seemed brighter, but inside her everything felt gray. Ethan found her sitting under the oak tree, her silver hair hiding her face. Lyra, he said gently, crouching in front of her. What happened? She looked up, her silver eyes shimmering with something Ethan had never seen in her before, fear. I have to go, she whispered. Ethan's chest tightened. Go, what do you mean? My people. They are afraid of you, of all humans, she said, her voice breaking slightly. They told me to stop, to leave, to erase everything. Ethan stared at her, shock and anger mixing in his eyes. They can't do that. You're not a machine. Lyra, he said firmly. She shook her head slowly, her hands trembling. You don't understand if I don't obey. They will come here. They will take me, maybe even you. Ethan's jaw tightened, his voice low and steady. Then let them come. I'm not letting them take you away. Lyra's heart skipped at his words. No one had ever spoken like that. For her, not in her entire life. Her people believed in duty above all else. But here was this human male, standing against the entire council for her. For a moment, she forgot the fear, the rules, the mission. For a moment, all she saw was Ethan. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stood by her window, staring at the stars. A small transport ship glimmered faintly in orbit. Her people were already here, waiting for her answer. She touched the glass, whispering softly, "I don't want to go." Suddenly, her communicator buzzed again. A new message appeared, short and sharp. "You have 1 cycle to comply, or the human subject will be neutralized." Lyra's knees went weak, her heart slamming against her chest. Neutralized. The word was cold, merciless. She grabbed her pad, her fingers shaking as she ran through corridors until she reached Ethan's door. He opened it, eyes widening at her pale, terrified face. "They are going to hurt you," she choked out. Ethan grabbed her shoulders gently, his voice steady. "Then we run," he said. Without hesitation, Lyra stared at him, stunned. "Run." "Where?" she whispered. Ethan's lips curved into a small, determined smile. "Anywhere but here. Together." For the first time in her life, Lyra chose not to obey the council. She chose Ethan, and with that choice, she set into motion something the galaxy would never forget. The night air was cold as Lyra and Ethan ran across the empty campus. Her silver hair shimmered faintly under the moonlight, while his footsteps pounded against the stone path. Lyra had never broken a rule this big before. Her entire life had been built on obedience, but every time she glanced at Ethan beside her, she knew this wasn't wrong. For the first time, she wasn't running away from something. She was running toward something. They reached the edge of the city where the tall buildings gave way to the open fields. Ethan slowed down, breathing hard. "Okay. We need a plan," he said between breaths. Lyra's hands trembled as she held her digital pad. "They will find me anywhere on this planet. They can track my genetic signal," she whispered. Ethan looked at her, his jaw tightening. "Then, we hide somewhere they won't expect," he said firmly. Lyra blinked, her silver eyes wide. "You are not afraid?" she asked softly. Ethan gave a small smile, though his voice was serious. "Of course I'm afraid. But I'm more afraid of losing you." Those words hit her harder than any warning from the council. Her kind didn't speak that way, didn't feel that way. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, not because of fear, but because of something warm growing inside her, something she had no name for. They reached an old abandoned observatory on a hill outside the city. The place smelled of dust and memories. Ethan pushed open the heavy door, and they stepped into the dark silence. "This will do for now," he said. Setting his bag down, Lyra sat against the wall, her hands still trembling. "I have put you in danger," she whispered. Ethan crouched beside her, his voice calm but firm. "You didn't put me in danger, Lyra. Your people did." His hand hovered close to hers, not touching, just near enough for her to feel his warmth. It was such a small thing, but it made her chest ache in a strange, beautiful way. She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Why are you helping me?" Ethan chuckled softly, his eyes meeting hers. "Because you're worth it." They sat in silence for a while, the sound of the wind moving through the broken windows. Lyra watched him as he stared at the stars. Humans were fragile compared to her kind, their bodies weaker, their lifespans shorter. Yet there was something unshakable about Ethan, something she couldn't quantify with numbers or science, something that made her want to stay. Hours passed, and Lyra finally broke the silence. "In my world, we do not bond like this," she said softly. Ethan glanced at her, curious. "Bond?" he repeated. She nodded slowly. "We have chosen partners during mating season, but it is functional, logical. We do not feel like you do." Her silver eyes lowered as she added quietly, "I do not understand why my chest hurts when I think they will take you away." Ethan gave a gentle smile, his voice soft as he answered, "That's not pain, Lyra. That's caring." Lyra's breath caught, the word feeling strange yet perfect on her tongue. "Caring," she whispered, like it was a secret, that night. They talked for hours, not as alien and human, not as subject and researcher, but as Lyra and Ethan, two lives colliding in a way neither of them had expected. She told him about the Zarin sky, where the stars moved like rivers. He told her about Earth's oceans, deep and endless. Every story, every laugh, built something invisible between them, something stronger than rules, stronger than fear. Near dawn, Lyra leaned against the cold wall, her voice quiet. "My people will come for me soon," she said. Ethan looked at her with calm determination. "Then we'll be ready," he said simply. She tilted her head, her silver eyes shimmering. "Why do humans fight for things they cannot win?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled faintly, his voice steady as he answered, "Because sometimes the fight itself is worth it." Lyra didn't understand fully, but her chest tightened again. This human was teaching her things no data pad ever could. And for the first time, she realized her mission had changed. She wasn't here to study humans anymore. She was here to understand why a human would risk everything for someone like her. As the first light of morning touched the old observatory, Lyra closed her eyes and whispered, "I will not let them take you." Ethan turned to her, his voice soft but sure. "They won't." And in that quiet moment, with the universe waiting outside, an unspoken bond formed between a human and an alien, a bond that would challenge the laws of her world, and maybe even change the galaxy. Asterisk. The morning sky burned with streaks of gold as Lyra stood at the observatory window. Her silver eyes scanned the horizon, but her mind was far away. She could feel them now, her people, the faint hum of their ships in orbit above Earth. The council was close, too close, and time was running out. Ethan stirred awake on the floor beside his bag, his brown hair a mess. Couldn't sleep. He asked softly, rubbing his eyes. Lyra shook her head, her voice quiet. "They are here," she whispered. Ethan sat up, his face hardening. "Then we have to move." Lyra turned to him, her hands shaking. "Ethan, if they find you, they will take you," she said. His eyes locked on hers, calm but unyielding. "Then let them try," he said firmly. Her chest tightened at his words. "Why do you not run from me?" she asked in a trembling voice. Ethan gave a faint smile. "Because some things are worth staying for." The words hit her like a pulse of light. She had spent her life believing duty came first, but now, staring at this human, she felt something shift inside her. For the first time, she wanted to choose for herself, not for the council, not for her mission. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. The observatory walls vibrated slightly as a shadow passed over the ground outside. Lyra's breath caught. "They have sent a retrieval craft," she whispered. Ethan grabbed her hand instinctively. "Then we decide here right now," he said, his voice steady. Her silver eyes widened at the warmth of his touch. For her kind, touch was rare, sacred. For humans, it was natural. But in that moment, it felt like the strongest shield in the universe. A voice echoed inside her communicator, cold and commanding. "Student Lyra, surrender now. The human will be neutralized if you resist." Ethan's grip tightened slightly on her hand. Lyra's breath came in quick bursts, her mind screaming with fear and questions. Her whole life had been about obedience, about serving her people. But here was this fragile human, standing beside her without fear. Her heart pounded, her voice shaking as she whispered, "Ethan, what do I do?" He looked at her, his brown eyes steady. "You decide, Lyra, not them," he said simply. Those words lit something inside her like fire. For the first time, someone was telling her she had a choice. For the first time, she believed it. She stepped away from the window and activated her communicator. "This is Student Lyra," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I will not comply." There was a long silence on the other end. Then the voice returned, colder than before. "Your attachment to the subject compromises your mission. You are hereby stripped of your rank. You will be retrieved by force." Lyra's breath shook, but she didn't back down. "You will not hurt him," she said sharply. "You will not touch him." the voice answered with chilling calm. "He is a threat to galactic balance." Ethan stepped forward, his voice rising as if they could hear him. "I'm not a threat, I'm just a human." Lyra's chest tightened, as tears burned her eyes. "No," she whispered softly, "you are more." The sound of metal against stone echoed outside as the craft landed near the observatory. The air filled with a low hum, and Lyra knew they were seconds away. Ethan turned to her, his voice steady despite the fear around them. "Whatever happens, you're not alone," he said. Lyra stared at him, her silver eyes wide and wet. For the first time, she understood what caring really meant. It wasn't numbers, it wasn't science, it was this: standing together even when the galaxy tried to pull them apart. She stepped forward and pressed her forehead gently to his, the Zarin sign of ultimate trust. "Then we face them together," she whispered. The door of the observatory creaked as a bright blue light spilled through the cracks. Lyra took Ethan's hand and held it tightly. Her decision was made, her path chosen. She would not go back. She would not abandon him, even if it meant standing against her own people. As the retrieval drone stepped inside, Lyra's voice cut through the air like a blade. "I choose the human," she said, and with that, the bond between a human and an alien became stronger than any law written among the stars. The bright blue light filled the old observatory as the drone stepped closer. Lyra's silver hair shimmered under the glow, her hand gripping Ethan's tightly. Her heart pounded so hard, she thought the entire galaxy could hear it. The cold, metallic voices of the drones echoed. "Student Lyra, surrender. The human will be secured and neutralized." Ethan squeezed her hand once, steady and calm. "We're not letting them take you," he whispered. Lyra's silver eyes burned with something the Council had never prepared her for. Not fear, not duty, but something far stronger. "I choose him," she said again, her voice sharp like a blade. The drone stopped for a moment, as if confused by her words. One of them spoke in a tone colder than the void. "You defy the Council, you defy your people." Lyra stepped forward, her voice rising. "I defy fear," she said, "and I defy a galaxy that sees humans as numbers, not as life." The room went silent except for the low hum of the ship outside. Ethan stared at her, his chest tight. In that moment, she wasn't just an alien student, she was a bridge between worlds, and she was fighting for him. Suddenly, the communicator on her wrist flickered. A deep voice replaced the drone's mechanical tone. "Lyra," it said, calm yet heavy with authority. It was the High Counselor himself. "Do you understand what you are doing?" "Child," Lyra swallowed hard but didn't back down. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I am protecting a life, a human life." The counselor's voice rumbled through the observatory. "Humans are unstable, their fertility unchecked, their numbers uncontrolled. They are a threat to balance." Ethan stepped forward, his voice strong despite the fear in his chest. "Maybe balance isn't everything," he said. "Maybe survival isn't about control. Maybe it's about caring." Lyra's heart tightened at his words. This human, this fragile creature, was standing against an entire galaxy without blinking. And for the first time, she realized why the Council feared them. Not because of their biology, not because of their numbers, but because of this, because humans chose each other, even when everything told them not to. The counselor's voice was quieter now, almost curious. "Why do you protect him?" Lyra stepped closer to Ethan, their hands still locked together. "Because he is more than a subject, more than a number," she said softly. "He is proof that humanity is not a threat, but a hope." For a long moment, there was no sound. Then the drones powered down slowly, their lights dimming. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Was this mercy or another trick? The counselor spoke one last time, his voice different now. "Student Lyra. No, Lyra of Earth. You have made your choice, and in doing so, you have made history." The drones stepped back, their cold forms retreating into the light outside. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Lyra's knees almost gave way as the tension left her body. They are leaving, she whispered. Ethan pulled her gently into his arms without thinking. You did it, he said softly. No, Lyra whispered back, her voice trembling but warm. We did it. Later that night, the stars above Earth seemed brighter. Lyra stood beside Ethan on the observatory roof, staring at the endless sky. The communicator on her wrist blinked with one final message. Observation terminated. Subject classified as ally. Humanity designated keystone species. Lyra's silver eyes shimmered as she read the words. Keystone species, she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly, his voice soft. Sounds important. Lyra turned to him, her chest warm in a way she finally understood. It means the galaxy needs you, she said quietly. And maybe I do too. For a long time they stood there in silence, human and alien. Two worlds colliding under the same stars. No longer researcher and subject. No longer student and experiment. Just Lyra and Ethan, bound by a decision that would echo through the universe. As the first light of dawn touched the earth, Lyra reached for his hand again. This time, not out of fear, but choice. And in that simple gesture, the galaxy changed.